Born and raised in Harare, Zimbabwe. Grew up there. I am the eldest of three boys, family of five, including mom and dad. I've been living in South Africa since 2004 and married my college sweetheart. But outside of that, my professional life, I've been working in the television industry for almost 20 years. I've been a writer, a blogger, a podcaster, a presenter, and I'm a sports nut. So all of those things form who I am.
You are a great storyteller. You love stories. You love movies. Where did that come from? Where did that passion come from?
It's an interesting thing because I think my love of story really comes from both of my parents, but primarily my mom. My dad is a great storyteller. He loves to tell stories, and he's done a lot of traveling and seen a lot of things and met a lot of very interesting people. My mom too. But my mom was the one who really bred a passion for television and for reading.
Right.
And for writing. I'm actually a writer as well. Although I say, aspiring to write a bit of a novelist. So I've got a couple of manuscripts on the way. But my mom really was the one who we would sit and we'd watch TV and really unpack certain things. And she was a lover of science fiction as well. So grew up watching Star Trek, and obviously any kid of the 80s, you know, you're watching Knight Rider, A-Team, all of those things. And so being able to delve into a different world was something that was always intriguing to me. And especially when you go into then reading about these different worlds. And I had a conversation with somebody recently. We were talking about whether or not you're a fiction person or a non-fiction person.
Right.
There seems to be that sort of break in people. I think you can be a little bit of both, but I'm very much a fiction person because I love the stories that we can make up and the stories that exist within ourselves. But there's also stories that we tell ourselves about who we are.
Yeah.
And then about how the world works at large. And those are the kinds of stories that I like to put across in my keynote, Leading in the Winner's Circle. Because I tell stories about sport, sports stars, but those stories are always about leadership, success, determination, and the things that people can learn individually, and also things that companies can actually learn as well, about how different organizations have become billion-dollar businesses, and the stories behind that, and we all tie into those.
No, that's... So your love for sport is obviously brought into your keynote. Yeah. Do you primarily relate leadership and success stories to those sports stories in your keynote?
Yes, I do. Though I wouldn't. It's not the only way that I do.
Yeah.
You know, I come from a sports mad family. My dad was a sports administrator. He was actually Zim's first black captain of the basketball team, the national team. And my mom, she just loves watching sport as well. So there's always been this within the blood. And over the years, you know, you sort of become a bit of a couch potato watching sport as well as playing. But seeing that there were certain things that you could learn from what people were doing.
Right.
And it wasn't just a question of shouting at the TV like you find some people do over the weekends only, but being able to say, okay, fine, why did this work? What about that person made them do these things? And I think that it's that critical analysis of the potential and the ability of sports people, sports teams, and the administrators as well, that you know, it can teach all of us a lot of really interesting and excellent lessons about how to succeed. Because life really is quite tough sometimes, and specifically in the business sense. And often, this is the equation that I like to draw up, sport is about winning. Sometimes you do get draws. The Americans tend not to ever do that.
Yeah.
They have to have a winner. It doesn't matter what sport it is in the States, somebody's winning.
Yeah.
And that's what business is. You don't have a draw in a business deal, right? You either do good business or you do bad business. And whether or not your business is actually succeeding comes down to the kind of strategies you put in place, the teams you have, the individual leadership, the team leadership, and how all of that works. And I like to try and correlate those two kinds of things together.
So I like the fact that you actually laid out that you say you do a critical analysis into those stories. You ask those why and how questions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets you apart from other storytellers, is you really delve into the why and the how. Was that connection between sports and business and sports and leadership apparent, or when did you make that connection?
It's always been apparent. It's just that I think what happens is we tend to look at things in prisms, right? So business exists here, sport exists here, entertainment exists here,
right.
And we don't see that there are through threads, that there are things that can be utilized all the way through. I mean, like for instance, you look at some of the major sports teams and how they've become some of the biggest brands globally. So a team like Real Madrid is one of the most valuable sports teams in the world, the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're valued at over $3 billion as an organization. Now, what I try to put across is when you look at those kinds of entities, or even a sporting body like the NBA, the National Basketball Association, the NBA are in charge of billion-dollar businesses, as all of the teams are, with employees who earn massive contracts. How do we then treat them as some throwaway thing and not see that there are massive business lessons to be learned about how to grow that business, how to communicate with your customers in terms of your fans, how to make their experience of your sport the best it can be.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing that people tend to sort of bypass and think, oh, what's the point of that? And this isn't just primarily skewed male. It is not gender specific. I love looking at women's sport in particular, like the WNBA, which is the women's NBA, the women's football teams. I mean, you just had the Women's World Cup just finished recently. The amount of surprise that people have when they see suddenly women's sport is just being put on the exactly. But it's been this good for a long time. It's just that broadcasters haven't necessarily seen the appetite that has been existing, yet it's always been there. And it's one of those where it feeds itself. So I think that's what businesses need to understand, is that yes, you might be a small business right now, but you could go on to become something major, and if you just pay the right kind of attention to the right details, this is the critical analysis, that can actually come to pass. The thing about emceeing as a whole, right, is that it is a collaborative effort. You have to be able to understand that you're part of a team sometimes. And also that, you have to be a willing participant. So what I love about emceeing in particular is that it's really about bringing everybody together and making sure the event works.
Right.
So when I think about it in terms of just how important people view the events that they're in, whether it be a wedding, which I've emceed a few in the past, or a conference with 1,000 delegates, everybody wants it to be the very best it can be. And the MC is part of that. The MC is the glue. They're the one who makes sure that the timing is correct, that people who need to be where they are actually where they are. Not necessarily herding them, but knowing that they know exactly what their responsibilities are as well. And then it comes down to spending time with organizers in terms of trying to bring everything together so that you're on the same page. Because if you're not, often that's where the problems come in. The best conferences I've ever been involved with have been the ones where we've had conversations leading up to it. What the client wants, knowing exactly what they want, and distilling that, because they'll tell you in a brief, I want you to be funny, I want you to do this. Then on the day, you'll be like, look, don't crack any jokes though. So you're like, okay, so funny without jokes. Okay, I think I've got your brief here. But in essence, it's knowing that they want you to be professional, they want you to be personable. They want you to have a rapport with the audience, and at the same time with the various speakers, knowing that you can actually knit things together from the themes that they've created, bringing that through all the way, because the best conferences are the ones where they want to try and do something a little bit different, where they're trying to get an experience across, and you are part of that experience. And that's what the MC does. They say, okay, fine, ladies and gentlemen, this is a James Bond themed thing, so everybody's in their tuxes and ball gowns. But in all of that, making sure that everybody understands that it's about the enjoyment of it all.